Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
If you've struggled for years to lose weight and have given up hope, did you know you can now access GLP-1 prescription medications through LifeMD? LifeMD is now offering eligible patients online access to GLP-1s, the breakthrough prescription medication that can help you lose body fat and weight. Listen to what people are saying.
I've been able to live my normal lifestyle, and I've lost 20 pounds already. It changed my life.
I wasn't expecting it to shut off the food noise. This was life-altering, and if I can do it, I feel like anybody can do it.
And here's the best part. Your insurance may cover 100% of the cost of your medication. So go to trylifemd.com to have your eligibility checked right now. Get started today at trylifemd.com. That's trylifemd.com.
This is SpaceTime Series 27, Episode 138, for broadcast on the 15th of November 2024. Coming up on SpaceTime, discovery of the outer solar system's magnetic field. Southern Launch gets the green light for orbital missions from South Australia, and Axiom unveils its new lunar spacesuits for NASA. All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
Scientists have uncovered an ancient magnetic field at the outer edge of the solar system. The findings, reported in the journal AGU Advances, are based on research into tiny 4.6 billion-year-old grain samples taken from the asteroid Ryugu. The grains are among those collected by the JAXA, Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency's Hayabusa 2 sample return mission, which parachuted down onto the Woomera rocket range in outback South Australia in 2020. Scientists believe Ryugu initially formed on the outskirts of the early solar system before migrating in towards the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and then eventually settling into orbit between Mars and Earth. The authors analysed Ryugu's particles for signs of an ancient magnetic field that might have been present when the asteroid first formed. Their results suggest that if there was a magnetic field, it would have been very weak. At most, such a field would have been about 15 microtesla. Now, Earth's own magnetic field today is around 50 microtesla. Even so, scientists estimate that such a low-grade magnetic field intensity would still have been enough to pull together primordial gas and dust to form the outer solar system's asteroids, and potentially play a role in giant planet formation, including Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. One of the study's authors, Benjamin Weiss from MIT, says scientists have known that a magnetic field shaped the inner solar system, where the Earth and the other terrestrial planets, Mercury, Venus and Mars, were formed. But until now, it's been unclear as to whether such a magnetic influence also extended into more remote regions of the solar system. Weiss says the new research shows that everywhere we look, there's some sort of magnetic field that was responsible for bringing mass to where the Sun and planets were forming. And he says that now also applies to the outer solar system planets as well. Around 4.6 billion years ago, the solar system formed from a dense cloud of interstellar gas and dust, which collapsed into a swirling disk of matter. Most of the material gravitated towards the center of the disk, forming the Sun. The remaining bits formed a solar nebula of swirling ionized gas. Scientists suspect that interactions between the newly formed Sun and the ionized disk generated a magnetic field that threaded through the nebula, helping to drive accretion and pull matter inwards to form the planet's asteroids and moons. This nebular field disappeared around 3 to 4 million years after the solar system's formation. Scientists had already determined that a magnetic field was present throughout the inner solar system out to about the orbit of Jupiter today. The intensity of this inner nebular field was somewhere between 50 and 200 microtesla, and it likely influenced the formation of the inner terrestrial planets. Now, these estimates of the early magnetic field are based on meteorites which have landed on Earth and are thought to have originated from the inner nebula. But the outer solar system was still a magnetic mystery, and that's where Ryugu comes in. Ryugu gave scientists the chance to finally analyze samples from the outer solar system. Weiss and colleagues acquired several sample grains, each about 1 millimeter in size. They placed the particles on a magnetometer to measure the strength and direction of the sample's magnetization. They then applied an alternating magnetic field to progressively demagnetize each sample. Like a tape recorder, this slowly rewinds the sample's magnetic record. Eventually, they found the samples held no clear sign of a preserved magnetic field. And this suggests that either there was no nebular field present in the outer solar system where the asteroid first formed, or the field was so weak that it was not recorded in the asteroid's grains. Now, if the latter is the case, the authors estimate such a weak field would have been no more than 15 microtesla in intensity. The authors also re-examined data from previously studied meteorites. They specifically looked at ungrouped carbonaceous chondrites. These are meteorites that have properties that are characteristic of having formed in the distal solar system. Scientists had already estimated that these samples were not old enough to have formed before the solar nebula disappeared. Any magnetic field record the samples contain, then, would not reflect the nebular field. They reanalyzed the ages of their samples and found that they're closer to the start of the solar system than what was previously thought. That means that these samples probably formed in this distal outer region. And one of the carbonaceous chondrite samples had a positive field detection of around 5 microtesla. Now that's consistent with the upper limit of 15 microtesla. The updated carbonaceous chondrite sample, combined with the new Ryugu samples, suggested the outer solar system beyond Jupiter hosted a very weak magnetic field that was nevertheless strong enough to pull matter together from the outskirts to eventually form the outer planetary bodies, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. This is SpaceTime. Still to come, Southern Launch gets the green light for orbital missions from South Australia, and Axiom unveils its lunar spacesuits for NASA. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. Southern Launch has finally been granted both federal and state government approvals for its Whalers Way orbital launch complex. Located on the tip of South Australia's Eyre Peninsula near Port Lincoln, the facility, which right now is little more than a concrete hardstand, could see regular orbital rocket launches from late next year. Once operational, Whalers Way will accommodate direct descent trajectories from 55 to 177 degrees, including polar sun-synchronous orbits and 135-degree inclinations. Current plans call for at least 2 launch pads, together with vehicle assembly buildings, clean rooms, integration facilities, and long-range tracking and telemetry sites, thereby allowing continuous monitoring right through to payload separation. Initial approvals have been granted for up to 42 orbital rocket launches every year. The Whalers Way facility will complement the Cuniba suborbital test range along South Australia's west coast near Ceduna, which is designed to track and recover test articles following their flights. Australia is currently home to 3 other spaceports. There's Equatorial Launch Australia's Axiom Space Centre in the Northern Territory. It's already been used for suborbital flights by NASA. Gilmour Space Technologies' Bowen Spaceport in North Queensland has just received its own orbital launch approval from the Australian Space Agency. And then there's the famous Woomera rocket range in outback South Australia run by the Department of Defence. It was home to Australia's first orbital launches and was once the second busiest spaceport in the world after Cape Canaveral. A 6th spaceport, Space Centre Australia, is currently planned for the Cape York Peninsula in far north Queensland. It's recently appointed former Prime Minister Scott Morrison as its chair. This is SpaceTime. Still to come, Axiom Space unveils its new lunar spacesuits for NASA, and later in the science report, scientists discovered genetic links between attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and Parkinson's disease. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. Axiom Space has unveiled the new lunar spacesuits NASA's Artemis 3 crew will be using when they walk on the moon in September 2026. The new suits are designed to be more robust than those worn 50 years ago during the Apollo missions, and they're better able to deal with the razor-sharp yet talcum powder-like lunar dust. The external layer of the new suits will still be white to better reflect the heat, but the new outfits will also include touches of grey and red stripes. The new suits are composed of interchangeable segments, allowing different people of different shapes and sizes to adapt the suits to meet their specific needs. The suits are designed to handle temperatures ranging from 54 degrees Celsius in direct sunlight down to minus 203 degrees Celsius in shaded areas. The backpacks carry enough oxygen, water and power for an 8-hour EVA or extravehicular activity. That's NASA speak for moonwalk. These reports from NASA TV and Axiom Space.
There's been a lot of excitement about spacesuits lately. But what about that iconic puffy marshmallow suit that we used to walk on the moon? This is what we call an extravehicular mobility unit, or EMU, and these suits truly are in a class of their own. Since Apollo, we've retooled and reimagined what can be accomplished on a spacewalk. And the current spacesuit that NASA uses is based on a design that first flew in 1981. Through rigorous maintenance, safety testing, and upgrades, this suit has allowed us to perform some incredibly monumental achievements and spacewalk our way into the record books.
We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now.
A spacesuit is not something you simply wear. It's more like an astronaut's very own personal vehicle.
A spacesuit is basically a self-contained environment. It is a mini spacecraft that is tightly wound around a human body,
containing everything they need to survive. Because we are going back to the moon and onto Mars. Exploration spacesuits have to solve the challenges from the past and anticipate those in the future.
Some of the biggest environmental challenges that we're seeing is finding a balance between mobility and lunar dust.
In other words, exploration is dirty work.
Looks like you guys have been playing in a coal bin. I don't know how we're going to get it off. Let's do the best we can. Yeah.
Like, how are we going to clean these guys off before they're allowed to go back inside? There's many ways, and do we know if they work? We have to find out.
And when your life depends on a good seal and perfectly performing fabrics, dust is kind of a big deal.
Lunar regolith, it looks like it's just a fine-grained material when you see the pictures of the Apollo boots in it and stuff. But you're going to see anywhere from broken rock shapes to fractured glass shapes. That's what it looks like under the microscope, of such a small particle size range that it gets in everything.
The Apollo missions only needed their suits to last for a few moonwalks. But these missions to the moon and Mars could be weeks, months, and even years long, demanding the most innovative solutions from NASA and our industry partners.
The Axiom team was very excited when we learned that we got the XEVAS contract, and to know that we're going to be a part of getting mankind back to the moon is really exciting.
The suits that are used today were developed several decades ago, and originally they were developed for the space shuttle, and they're used in the International Space Station today, but if we want to go back to the moon, then we need a new spacesuit.
Spacesuit design has been really evolutionary for decades, and we are kind of taking a larger leap. We are changing it so it's dust tolerant, so that you can walk far distances, that you can help if your fellow crew member gets incapacitated, the ability to bring them back with you. So all these updates were more of a revolution than an evolution of the current design.
I'm excited by some of the really new developments in technology that have been added in, and I think it's going to be a great suit.
It is an unbelievable amount of effort, from seamstresses to requirement specialists to engineers, managers. We have a range of skill sets, and everyone is so proud to be doing what they're doing.
It's like a little bit of each of us is going up there with the astronauts, and a little bit of our mentors, a little bit of our family. Like it's more than just ourselves, right? It's everyone before us and everyone after us. So that's, you can definitely feel it.
That gives you goosebumps, right? Like that is, it hasn't sunk in yet, and I don't know if it will ever sink in. Even when it's happening and you're looking at the moon and you're like, there's someone on the moon in an Axiom suit, like that is the dream.
Those reports from NASA TV and Axiom Space. Included were Axiom Space's AX+ project manager Tammy Radford, EVA Deputy Project Manager Russell Ralton, AX+ Manager Michelle Stein, AX2 Mission Commander Peggy Whitson, AX+ Thermal Loop Lead Sarah Lucario, Sewing Tech Zach Pugh, and AX+ Deputy Manager Christopher Jackson. This is SpaceTime. And time now to take another brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with the Science Report. A new study has shown that the weather systems driving much of southern Australia's rainfall have declined over recent decades. A report in the Journal of Southern Hemisphere Earth System Science found that low-pressure weather systems, which are an important source of rainfall in southern Australia, have been on the decline since the mid-20th century. The study's authors analysed long-term trends in lows between 1959 and 2023. They found a steady decline in the number of low-pressure systems over that time period and a corresponding decline in rainfall. The authors say decreasing lows on the east coast of southern Australia can explain more than 70% of rainfall changes experienced since the 1960s. They say further research should investigate the influence of human-driven climate change in these trends and whether this decline is related to other forms of global climate change. The world's largest study of brain volume has discovered genetic links to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and Parkinson's disease. The findings, reported in the journal Nature Genetics, found hundreds of genetic variants involved in brain size, which are also found in people with brain conditions such as Parkinson's and ADHD. The study is the world's largest investigation of how genetic differences influence structures in the deep brain, and it provides a new insight into the intricate relationship between genetic makeup and brain health. Well, here's something we should have already known. A new study warns that taming wild elephant calves increases their stress levels and may have implications for their physical health. A quarter of Asian elephants are captive, with more than 90% of these tamed and cared for by handlers. A report in the Journal of the Royal Society Open Science measured indicators of stress while elephant calves underwent taming in Myanmar. Although most indicators of acute and elevated stress levels only lasted a few weeks, the authors found that some were still high several months later, and that could have serious implications for the animal's physical health. Time now for the silliest story of the week, and there are reports in merry old England that the ghost of Robin Hood has been seen haunting the enchanted woods of Sherwood Forest. A group of mediums and paranormal investigators claim to have made sightings not just of Robin Hood, but also of dark-hooded druids roaming the woods late at night. Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics wonders, how do they know that it's Robin Hood?
The story with Sherwood Forest is, if you've been there up near Nottingham in sort of the Midland sort of area of England, is that because there's the home of Robin Hood and his merry men. Robin Hood was supposed to be Robin of Oxley, who was a nobleman who was deprived of his realm by the Sheriff of Nottingham, King John, when he came back from the Crusades. And he therefore got really upset about that and ran into Sherwood Forest and met these merry men, all wearing Lincoln green outfits, looking very fetching, so they could blend into the Sherwood Forest. And then they would start robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. Most of that's rubbish, never mind the fact that Robin of Oxley might have existed. He was a nobleman of sorts and disenfranchised, but the concept of the merry men and their bow and arrow and robbing from the rich and giving to the poor was pretty much made up. But it's a nice story and it's been around for a long time. It's based on the idea of the Green Man, a mysterious person living in the forest who's mixed in with nature, who's like Tolkien, Tom Bombadil sort of character, who therefore is a spirit of nature. Robin Hood sort of comes out of that a bit. So what's happening is that there's a paranormal expert, mediums and investigators who are reporting they've been detecting the spirit of Robin Hood in the forest. Now, why Robin Hood? Why not Prince John or the Sheriff of Nottingham?
Friar Tuck.
Or Friar Tuck and Little John, etc. All these people who are equally sort of tenuous in their existence. Why only Robin Hood's spirit? Why don't all the others? And surely they'd be the same in the New Forest or Epping Forest or the various forests that still exist in England. Now they're also seeing druids in the forest wandering through in their white robes. Now the trouble is with druids, the image we have of druids is pretty much a recent fabrication. Julius Caesar refers to druids in his annals of invading England. Or they might be a total recent fabrication from the 1700s when the whole thing became interesting. And there's no suggestion that druids were associated for a start with Stonehenge. Now in fact, Sherwood Forest, I really don't know. But suddenly there's people saying the spirit of Robin Hood and figures of druids wandering through Sherwood Forest. And you're going to say, hang on, they weren't real in the first place. That's certainly not the way that you're thinking of them. It's a strange, wonderful thing about the paranormal that people will grab onto anything, no matter how illogical or inconsistent are their theories. And so Sherwood Forest is probably as good as any place to find a haunted tree or a figure of a legendary thief or some mystical priest who never really existed as such as people see them. So all part of the glorious tapestry of folklore, I would suggest.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. that's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Pocket Casts, Spotify, Acast, Amazon Music, Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favorite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details. And if you want more SpaceTime, please check out our blog, where you'll find all the stuff we couldn't fit in the show, as well as heaps of images, news stories, loads of videos, and things on the web I find interesting or amusing. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.tumblr.com. That's all one word, and that's Tumblr without the E. You can also follow us through @StuartGary on Twitter, @SpaceTimeWithStuartGary on Instagram, through our SpaceTime YouTube channel, and on Facebook, just go to facebook.com/SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.